21st Century learners. It's our third week and I hope you are still excited to learn and discover more about Philippine literature. I am sure that you will enjoy this day as we discuss the conventional and 21st century literary genres. For the lesson objectives, number 1, you are expected to differentiate the 21st century literary genres and the ones from the original genres. Number 2 is to enumerate the elements, structures, and traditions of each literary genre. And number 3, to appreciate the unique features of each genre. Again, may I remind you to please bring out your modules, your notebook, and of course, your pen as they will be needed for our today's discussion. To begin, let me ask you this question. What really comes to your mind when you hear the word 21st century? You're right. Maybe you think of technology, innovation, and modernization. Now, what do you think makes a literature classified as 21st century literature? Let us then define what is a 21st century literature and who are the 21st century readers. 21st century literature refers to new literary work created within the decade. It is written by contemporary writers which may deal with current themes, issues, and reflects a technological culture. It often breaks the traditional writing rules. While a 21st century reader grew up using technology as the primary learning tool, it is capable of navigating and interpreting digital formats and media messages. He also possesses literacy skills which include technological abilities such as keyboarding, internet navigation, interpretation of technological speak, ability to communicate and interpret coded language, and decipher graphics. Now, this module will help you classify the literary pieces you have read or will be reading into different 21st century literary genres. Well, by the way, a genre is a broad term that translates from the French to mean kind or type in entertainment. This can translate to horror, romance, science fiction, etc. In general, these types differ for all sorts of reasons, from the actions in their plots to the feelings they elicit from the audience. However, in literature, there are some more defined genres. It is important to know which genre a piece of work falls into because the reader will already have certain expectations before he even begins to read. There are actually 4 types of literary genres. 4 major types of literary genres. Do you still remember them? So let's recall those 4. The first one is poetry. Poetry is an imaginative awareness of experience expressed through meaning, sound, and rhythmic language. It also evokes an emotional response. It has been known to employ meter and rhyme. The very nature of poetry as an authentic and individual mode of expression makes it nearly impossible to define. All poems share specific characteristics. For example, poetry is written in lines and stanzas instead of sentence and paragraphs. Some poems follow strict rules to the number and lengths of lines and stanzas, whereas many poems are much more free-flowing and we call it as free verse, right? The second one is the drama. It is a composition in prose or verse presenting in dialogue or pantomime a story involving conflict, more contrast of character, especially unintended to be acted on a stage or play. It may be any situation or series of events having vivid, emotional, conflicting, or striking interest. Next is fiction. It is a literature created from the imagination, not presented as fact, though may be based on a true story or situation. Types of literature in the fiction include the novel, short story, and novella. It must be written in sentences and paragraphs with all the proper punctuation marks and grammar, which makes it as a prose. Usually, fiction is broken up into chapters as well. Since it is based on the imagination, the subject matter in fiction works can be nearly anything. Fiction can take place in the present day, the future, or even in the past. It can incorporate the most fantastical ideas or follow an everyday life. Some examples of works of fiction are legends, the folk tales, fairy tales, short stories, or any other novels. For example, the popular Hunger Games and the Divergent trilogies are fiction which occurs in a post-apocalyptic future. Lastly is the non-fiction. The non-fiction is based on facts and the author's opinion about a subject. The purpose of non-fiction writing is to inform and sometimes to persuade. Its examples are biographies, articles from textbooks and magazines, or newspapers. If fiction is fake, then non-fiction is the opposite. It comes from real life. Works of non-fiction are all based in real-world experiences. And now that you have rediscovered the conventional literary genres, we will now learn the modern literary genres presently used by 21st century writers. And these are known as the 21st century literature genres. Ready? To begin, do you think it is more enjoyable to read nowadays if stories are associated with drawings or images? They say the 21st century learners usually have a shorter span of attention, making it hard for them to deal with full text. That's why the first genre of literature was born. This is what we call as the illustrated novel. The term illustrated novel refers to an extended narrative with multiple images that together with the text produce meaning. It is a story through text and illustrated images. 50% of the narrative is presented without words. The reader must interpret the images to comprehend the story completely. Textual portions are presented in traditional form. Some illustrated novels may contain no text at all, and it spans all genres. Examples include The Invention of New Vocabulary by Brian Selnick and The Arrival of Shauntan. Are you familiar with ebooks? Well, I'm sure you are. Well, the next genre is somehow similar. This is the digifiction. Digital fiction or digifiction is a fiction that is written for and read from a computer. It can be web or app-based for tablets and smartphones or accessed via CD-ROMs. Digital fictions, however, are different from ebooks. Triple media literature because it combines three media, the book, movie or video, and of course the internet website. To get the full story, the student must be engaged in navigation, reading, and viewing in all three forms. Rather than existing as a digital version of a print novel, digital fictions are what we know as born digital. That is, they would lose something of their aesthetic and or structural form and meaning if they were removed from the digital medium. For example, they may contain hyperlinks, moving images, mini-games, or sound effects. Furthermore, unlike an ebook in which the reader moves from one page to another in a linear fashion, in many digital fiction, the reader has a role in constructing the narrative either by selecting the hyperlinks or by controlling a character's journey through the story world. One example of this is Patrick Harman's Skeleton Creek and Anthony Salker's Level 26. Now, how many of you are fond of reading comics? Will you name some of your favorites? Now check this out. The graphic novel. Graphic novel is a story that is presented in comic strip format and published as a book. The term is employed in broadly manner encompassing non-fiction works and thematically linked short stories as well as fictional stories across a number of genres. However, graphic novel is different from merely comics. For many, the word comics denote a periodical for children published on weekly or monthly basis, sold at newsstand or in comic book stores, often with pages devoted to advertising and intended for younger readers, competitions, and puzzles. In contrast, a graphic novel is usually taken to mean a long comic narrative for a mature audience, published in hardback or paperback and sold in bookstores, with serious literary themes and sophisticated artwork. Archie Comics by John Goldwater and illustrator Bob Montana is a good example. Now let me show some pictures for the next genre. Are these characters familiar to you? Absolutely! This added color to your childhood. But do you know that they are also part of the 21st century literature? Yes, you heard it right. They are what we call as the manga. Manga is actually a Japanese word for comics. It is used in the English-speaking world as a generic term for all comic books and graphic novels originally published in Japan. Manga is an umbrella term for a wide variety of comic books and graphic novels originally produced and published in Japan. Unlike American comic books, which are usually printed in color, Japanese manga is always black and white. Full-color prints are often used on some special releases. It is considered as artistic and using the storytelling style. Japanese manga is read right to left rather than left to right, which is the norm for English language publications. American manga, however, is sometimes used to refer to comics created by American artists using the manga style. We also have different types of manga. We have shonen, for boys manga, and this includes Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece. We also have the girls manga, and we call it as shoujo, and one example of this is the very popular Sailor Moon. We also have men's manga or the seinen. One example of this is Akira. Of course, we have Josei for the women's manga, like Loveless and the Paradise Kiss. And we also have our favorite, the children's manga, or also called as the Kodomo. Example of this is the Doraemon and our favorite Hello Kitty. The next literary genre is what we call as the doodle fiction. It is a literary presentation where the author incorporates doodle writing, drawings, and handwritten graphics in place of the traditional font. A doodle fiction is different from an illustrated novel in such a way that graphics here are basically hand-drawn. Drawing enhances the story, often adding humorous elements. Examples include The Diary of a Wimpy King by Jeff Keighley and Teaming Failure by Stephen Festus. And now, for the next, how many of you have emails and messengers? I bet most of you have. Do you know that by simply exchanging personal messages with your friends or others, you can also create a story or a narrative? Let's learn more about the text talk novels. This type of literature originated in Japan, where it has become a popular literary genre. However, it its popularity has also spread to other countries internationally, especially to China, United States, Germany, and even to South Africa. A cell phone novel or mobile phone novel is a literary work originally written on a cellular phone via text messaging. Here, the story was told through dialogues in the social network. The information of the whole work can be read at the websites and exchanged by using chat or any, and it's like when you exchange chats with your friends through your messenger or your email. And in the process, you create a story or a narrative. It also uses blogs, email, and instant messenger or the IM format. Example of this is the very popular Vince and Kat series. For decades, women have been empowered. They have been part of bigger issues concerning economical, social, and even political aspects. Thus, chick lit or chick literature was born. It came from two words, chick and lit. Chick is an American slang for a young woman, and lit is a shortened form of the word literature. It is a genre fiction which addresses issues of modern womanhood, often humorously and lightheartedly. Chick lit typically features a female protagonist whose femininity is heavily thermalizing into the plot. Protagonists vary widely in ethnicity, age, social status, marital status, career, and even religion. According to Goodreads, chick lit is not considered a subgenre of romance because although plots may include romantic elements, because the heroine's relationship with her family or friends is often just as important as her romantic relationship. Scarlett Bailey's The Night Before Christmas and Miranda Dickinson's It Started With a Kiss are some examples of this. Who says stories need to be long? Do you believe that you can narrate a story using few words instead of the conventional long narratives? Yes, through flash fiction, it is very possible. It is a style of fictional literature of extreme brevity. There is no widely accepted definition of the length in category. It could range from a word to 1,000. Flash fiction is a medium of brief and enclosed stories. Meanwhile, it can be limited to 6 words in the form of a 6-word flash fiction. It is a 6-word story that allows a reader to consume an entire narrative in just a moment's time. One example is Ernest Hemingway's For Sale, Baby Socks Never Worn. Now, can you make a story out of this? Again, For Sale, Baby Socks Never Worn. If I were to interpret the statement, perhaps the baby socks that has never been worn refer to a child unborn, maybe because of miscarriage, or it could also be because of impotence. So you see, 6 words but already a story. Another literary genre which you commonly encounter is the creative nonfiction. It is also known as the literary nonfiction or the narrative nonfiction. It is a genre of writing that uses literary styles and techniques to create factually accurate narratives. Unlike other nonfiction such as the technical writing or journalism, which is also rooted in accurate fact, but it is not primarily written in service to its craft. As a genre, creative nonfiction is still relatively young and is only beginning to be scrutinized with the same critical analysis given to fiction and poetry. It is actually a mixture of facts and creativity. 1,000 Gifts by Anne Boscombe and Wind, Sand, and Stars by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry are some of the examples. Do you love to take on adventures? From faraway galaxies to underwater worlds and everywhere in between, meeting otherworldly characters and technologies along the way? Well, science fiction may be right for you. Science fiction or sci-fi is a genre of speculative fiction dealing with imaginative concepts such as futuristic science and technology, space travel, time travel, faster than light travel, a parallel universe, and extraterrestrial life. It often explores the potential consequences of scientific and other innovations and has been called a literature of ideas. Examples include Suzanne Collins' Mockingjay and Sarah Maas' Kingdom of Ash. Moving forward, we have blogs. In 1994, when blogs began, a blog was more of a personal diary that people shared online. In this online journal, you could talk about your daily life or share about the things that you were doing. The people saw an opportunity to communicate this information online. Thus began the beautiful world of blogging. It is also a discussion or informational website published on the World Wide Web, consisting of discrete, often informal diary-style text entries or posts. Posts are typically displayed in reverse chronological order so that the most recent post appears first at the top of the web page. A weblog or a website containing short articles called posts are that change regularly. Some blogs are written by one person containing his or her own opinions, interests, and experiences, while others are written by different people. The last genre of the 21st century literature is the hyperpoetry. It is a digital poetry that uses link and hypertext markup. It can either involve set words, phrases, lines, etc. that are presented in variable order but sit on the page much as traditional poetry does. Or it can contain parts of the poem that move and transform. It is usually found online through CD-ROM, and diskette versions exist. The earliest examples date to no later than the mid-1980s. Now, after learning the different conventional and modern genres of 21st century literature, you are now ready to explore more about the concepts by answering the activities that follow. For the first one, you will analyze the text entitled Tristan Cafe and then identify its literary genre. So, let us read the Tristan Cafe. "I'm letting you go," she said, with the thought of making him the happiest. Yes, she loves him. Yes, her world crumbled. Yes, it broke her. Yes, she read the past. "I love her, but I don't want her anymore." He paused, not ready for a knock on her door. "And Anne, I'm letting you go." Yes, he loves her. Yes, he's confused. Yes, it broke him. Yes, he didn't think she'll find it. So, are you able to figure out what literary genre it falls? Yeah, you are right. This is an example of a flash fiction. But why flash fiction? Absolutely, because the story is compressed and briefly conveyed. Now let's proceed to the next activity. Here you are going to write a 5 to 10 sentence paragraph describing the characteristics of Tristan Cafe that qualifies it as a 21st century literary piece. You may use the paragraph writing rubrics on page 10 of your module as your guide. For activity 2, you will compare and contrast this modern literary genre using the Venn diagram. Well, here's how to complete the Venn diagram. In the overlapping area, write all of the things that the two ideas, people, or objects have in common. This will be what you refer to when you are comparing these ideas in the essay. In the areas that are not overlapping, you are going to write all of the differences, contrast between the two ideas, or the objects or the people. So here you are going to compare a text stock novel, a blog, and a hyper poetry. Then based from your answer in this activity, you are bound to answer the following questions. Number 1. What characteristics make these genres similar in terms of elements? And number 2. What characteristics make the genres similar in terms of structure? Now under what I can do, you have learned the different conventional and modern literary genres. As 21st century learner, you are going to retell the old Filipino folktale, The Sun and the Moon, using one of the genres below and post your work on your Facebook page with the hashtag Folktales in the 21st Century. You are going to use the rubric on page 13 of your module as your guide. You can choose between A. a 30-word flash fiction, B. a 4-panel comic, or C. a 1-page doodle fiction. And finally, to see how much you have learned, let's answer this short quiz. You are going to choose the letter of the best answer and write the letter of your answer on a separate sheet of paper. Number 1. A story told using a combination of text and illustrations or without text at all. A. Digifiction, B. Doodle fiction, C. Illustrated novel, or D. Creative non-fiction. Number 2. A site of collected posts or articles written by one or more people and updated regularly. Letter A. Blog, B. Flash fiction, C. Hyper poetry, or D. Digifiction. Question number 3. Brief stories told in 1,000 words or less. A. Blog, B. Flash fiction, C. Hyper poetry, or D. Digifiction. Number 4. These are tales written and presented using dialogues in social media. A. Chick lit, B. Digifiction, C. Hyper poetry, or D. Text talk novel. Number 5. It is a factual story written using literary devices and techniques. A. Digifiction, B. Doodle fiction, C. Illustrated novel, or D. Creative non-fiction. For number 6, drawings enhance stories in this form where illustrations and handwritten graphics are incorporated. A. Digifiction, B. Doodle fiction, C. Illustrated novel, or D. Creative non-fiction. Number 7. This is the genre of speculative fiction that deals with the concepts of time, travel, parallel universe, extraterrestrial life, and futuristic technology. Is it A. Digifiction, B. Doodle fiction, C. Science fiction, or D. Creative non-fiction? For number 8, it is a collection of stories presented in comic book formats. A. Digifiction, B. Doodle fiction, C. Illustrated novel, or D. Graphic novel. Number 9. Literature that uses hypertext markup connect to other parts of the piece. A. Blog, B. Flash fiction, C. Hyper poetry, or D. Digifiction. Number 10. In English-speaking countries, these are stories with illustrations published in Japan. Letter A. Manga, B. Digifiction, C. Graphic novel, or D. Illustrated novel. Number 11. It is a 700-word story like Angels and Blueberries by Tara Campbell is a short fiction that falls under this literary genre. A. Blog, B. Flash fiction, C. Hyper poetry, or D. Digifiction. Number 12. Christopher Ford's Stickman Odyssey, which tells the stories through the text and handwritten graphics, is an example of this literary genre. Is it A. Digifiction, B. Doodle fiction, C. Illustrated novel, or D. Creative non-fiction? Number 13. Before it was adapted into an anime, Yoshishiro Togashi's Hunter x Hunter is a comic book series from Japan that falls under this literary genre. Is it A. Manga, B. Digifiction, C. Graphic novel, or D. Illustrated novel? Question number 14. Batman, The Dark Knight by Frank Miller is a popular example of this literary genre where the story is written in comic book format. A. Manga, B. Digifiction, C. Graphic novel, or D. Illustrated novel. And for the last number 15, Sophie Kinsella's Confessions of a Shopaholic, which revolves around a woman's shopping addiction and her journey to overcoming it, is an example of this literary genre. Is it A. Chick lit, B. Digifiction, C. Hyperpoetry, or D. Text talk novel? And now for the generalization, let us have what I have learned. You have tried your hands in discovering the characteristics of the literary genres discussed in this module. Now reflect on what you have learned by answering the questions that follow. Question number 1. What are the conventional literary genres? Yes, we have poetry, drama, fiction, and non-fiction. Question number 2. What are the common characteristics of the conventional literary genres? You are right. It uses figurative language. The genre raises certain expectation in what the reader anticipates will happen within that work. Now, what are the different 21st century literary genres? Correct. We have illustrated novel, digifiction, graphic novel, the manga, doodle fiction, text talk novel, the chick lit, flash fiction, 6-word flash fiction, creative non-fiction, science fiction, blog, and hyper poetry. What are the common characteristics of modern literary genres? Absolutely. It deals with the current themes and reflects technological culture. For number 5, what is the difference between conventional and modern literary genres? You got it right. Conventional are traditional forms of literature, while modern are those that relate to the current trends. Now, for your additional activity, to further test what you have learned, you are going to examine the 2 examples below and do the following tasks. 1. Identify the literary genres of each example. And number 2, compare and contrast the characteristics of the 2 genres. You may also refer on your module for the image. As I end my discussion, let me leave to you this quote. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Indeed, there is nothing wrong in living with the traditional. However, we need to learn that it is also necessary for us to embrace changes and transformation, especially if it will lead us towards better results. So keep learning, keep loving, keep learning to love, and keep loving to learn. Thank you for joining me for another day, sweethearts. Looking forward to seeing you again on the next. Stay safe and God bless us all.